So close and yet so far for the Pacers, who lose to the Timberwolves by 2, crushing game. They had a chance. They were ahead late and they lost it. And yet you could very easily argue they blew this game at the beginning. Why are the Pacers starting games so bad? What could they have done differently to win this one late? Why was Anthony Edwards so insane? We'll talk about it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Friday. Congrats. You made it through the week, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we're talking Pacers Wolves. We're talking slow starts. We're talking not good enough finishes. We're talking what people are talking about. No timeout at the end. Lots to get to today from Pacers Timberwolves. A 113-111 Wolves win. Wolves defense very good. Pacers defense early in the game not good enough. And that is all it took for the Pacers to lose. I think that a lot of focus should go to the end of this game. The Pacers were ahead very late in this game and did not win. But I think the takeaway from the team and from Rick Carlisle was about the start of the game. And I actually want to start at the start for that reason. People had some beef with this take. I very much agree with it. Rick Carlisle said post-game, we clearly lost this game in the first quarter, right? And people said, no, they came back. And they did. But they wouldn't have had to come back if they started better. And if they started better, they would have been ahead in the fourth quarter instead of behind or barely ahead. So I think that is a good place to start. And I want to talk a lot about the start of this game and a lot of recent Pacers games. 33-23 was the score after one quarter of this basketball game. The Timberwolves, for the rest of the game, did not reach 33 in a quarter, right? So that was their best offensive quarter of the game. Anthony Edwards got hurt right away. He came back and played. Obviously, if you watched any of the game or have heard about it, you know he was incredible. But he missed a significant portion of the first part of this game. Cat wasn't playing. So the lineup the Timberwolves had out there for the first 4 minutes of the game was Mike Conley, Kyle Anderson, Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert, and I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker was the last guy they brought in. Then Naz Reid was mixed in at times. Yes, it was Alexander Walker. That group torched the Pacers offensively. And the Wolves went 2 for 8 in the first quarter and scored 33 points, and they were up 10. This game started off so poorly for the Pacers. So poorly. They were ahead 3-2, or excuse me, they were ahead 2-0, and then it was all Wolves for a while. The Wolves were up by 10 in about 6 minutes of play, right? They got up 16-6 with 5:48 to go in the first quarter. They got up by 15 at 27-12, I believe was the first time that happened. I can't exactly remember. About 10 minutes into the game, they were up 14 points, excuse me. Yes, 29-15. And the Pacers played terrific the rest of the game, but they started so bad. Terrific's a stretch. They played well enough to win the rest of the game, right? Dominant third quarter for the Pacers. They got more stops. They figured out what they needed to do to beat Minnesota after that first quarter. They realized that they couldn't play at the effort level they had. They shouldn't have had to realize that from a bad start. They should have come out with that energy level, and they didn't. And that is the difference. You lose by 2, yes. You had a chance. You had a chance to tie it on the last possession. You were ahead in the fourth quarter. I understand all that, and we'll talk about the end of the game in just a second. But the beginning is where it ended. They were clawing their way back the whole game. They had to make decisions from behind instead of ahead. And even when they did come back, if they had played an even first quarter, they would have been up 10 with a couple minutes to go instead of tied. That stretch was killer. Pacers looked really atrocious. I understand not scoring that well against Minnesota. 23 was the Pacers' lowest quarter, but it wasn't that they weren't scoring or missing, right? They were turning it over like crazy. 5 turnovers in the first quarter for the Pacers. And so they made as many threes as Minnesota, but they took 7 less shots and made 6 fewer because they were coughing it up sloppily so much. That can't be the way that Minnesota beats you. So that's how Minnesota's offense with a Conley, Alexander Walker, Gobert, Anderson, McDaniels lineup. And Ant came back and played 8.5 minutes of the quarter, but he only had 4 points, right? That's how that group strangled them so much. And then Naz Reid came in and was awesome to close the quarter. He had 9 points and was leading his team. But that can't happen for the Pacers, right? They cannot have that kind of start. And so that was a big takeaway from all of them, right? We talked to Siakam, we talked to Haliburton, we talked to Carlisle after the game. They all lamented the start. And we will talk a lot about the start of this game and recent games in the second segment. Fixes, what's it going to take, all sorts of stuff. But now we skip ahead to the end, the opposite end of this game, because yes, the Pacers overcame that, right? They got a lead in the third quarter. They were up in the fourth, although their biggest lead was 2. They were never up more than 2. So they never really had a firm grip on this game. But this game was within 5 for the final 20 minutes. It was, if you're a fan, if you're not rooting for the Pacers or Timberwolves and you're listening to this, watch this game. It was awesome. It was such a blast. I think the widest scoring margin in the fourth quarter was 5. So with 5 minutes to go, actually, is when that happened. And Edwards hits a free throw, and it was 101-96 at the time. But the Pacers had their starters in, and their starters had more energy. Credit to the Pacers bench. They did the thing again where they go 5 bench guys against some starters from the other team, just like they did against Dallas, and the bench group held up. And they held up their end of the bargain, so the starters had a chance for the Pacers. And so they had more energy than the Wolves starters. And so they slowly whittle that 5-point lead down. And with 2:47 to go, Tyrese Haliburton hits a finger roll layup, and the Pacers take the lead. Crowd's hype. Crowd's all into it. Anthony Edwards scores the other end. Get used to me saying that, by the way. When the Pacers took the lead, remember this, with 2:47 to go, Anthony Edwards had 34 points. Very good. We'll remember that number, though, 34. He scores on the next possession. Pascal Siakam, cutting dunk, bang, Pacers back in the lead. Awesome. Mike Conley scores on the other end. And their lead's gone. And then Haliburton hits a free throw. So for a minute, really 2 minutes, minute and a half, let's say, the Pacers and Timberwolves traded buckets, and they were tied with a minute and a half to go. So the Pacers were ahead with 2:47 to go. They were ahead with 2 minutes to go. They were tied with 1:28 to go. Then it was the Anthony Edwards show. And he was getting double teamed. He would come around the screen, 2 guys come at him. And he sometimes got rid of it. And sometimes he just yanked a 25-foot pull-up 3 right in the face of his defenders and drilled it. 3-point lead for the Wolves. Myles Turner gets smoked on a layup. Rick Carlisle, very unhappy, visibly unhappy watching this. A lot of complaints in my Twitter mentions about officiating from this game. It wasn't really mentioned a ton post-game by anyone on the Pacers. Carlisle did talk about it after the game. I'm trying to pull up his quote as I talk. He said, the whistles weren't going our direction tonight, so we needed to do something to dictate what was going on. He thought they did that in the second half, the dictating part, and not the first half. But no foul on the Turner layup. And then Anthony Edwards comes down and does this thing again, dotting a mid-ranger with Pascal. No, this wasn't the Pascal Siakam. Dotting a mid-range shot to put the Wolves up by 5. But the Pacers are not done. They're not out of chances. It's a 5-point game. They have the ball. And Myles Turner wiggles free in the corner, drills a 3. Awesome shot. They're down just 2. And then Ant gets double teamed by the Pacers, wiggles free, gets a floater over Siakam from 14 feet with a man on him, and drills it. I mean, he was unbelievable. He had 43 points after hitting that floater. He scored 9 points from the 2:18 mark to the 22-second mark. At under 2 minutes, he scored 9 points, while the Pacers scored, I should be doing math fashion, the 6. He alone was the game. Pacers get bailed out again. Aaron Nesmith fouled on a 3 by Kyle Anderson, who fouls out. Nesmith hits all 3 free throws. So it's 112-111. And guess who? Anthony Edwards gets fouled. It took the Pacers 9 seconds to foul. They foul Ant. Ant makes the first. Ant misses the second. So the Pacers have the ball. They're down 2. Let's talk about it. Everybody's thing. The Pacers had a timeout, and they did not use it. Here's what happened if you missed it. Free throws missed. The ball gets to Haliburton from Myles Turner, who got the rebound. Myles Turner turns and flips it up. Aaron Nesmith's behind everybody from the defense except for one player. He catches in transition. Gets past that one player, sort of, and has an angle for a layup. And he puts it up. And Anthony Edwards, who just dominated the final 2 minutes of this game and scored 10 points in just over 2 minutes after that free throw, gets all the way back and makes one of the craziest, most athletic plays I've ever seen. He jumps. Anthony Edwards is 6'4". Anthony Edwards is a little shorter than Tyrese Haliburton. They're probably about the same height, but I think he's shorter. His head hit the rim, and he was still going up. He jumped so high. It was insane. He said on the Bally Sports North post-game interview, that's the highest he's jumped in his life. Adrenaline pumping. He's flying back in transition. Insane block. Insane play. Jaden McDaniels bumps into Nesmith, no call. The layup's blocked. The Wolves get the rebound. The game ends. Here's the thing. One, if you told me, hey, the Pacers are going to be down by 2 with 6 seconds to go, and they're going to have an Aaron Nesmith transition layup to tie it with 2 seconds left, and it will take a freak of nature play to block it, I think the Pacers would have said, sweet, sign us up. We'll take that play. We'll take it, right? Haliburton made a great pass and a great read. He trusts himself in the clutch, or Carlisle trusts him in the clutch. He didn't score. So, of course, when the play doesn't work out, there's going to be discussion about what did or did not happen. A lot of people are team timeout. I am not. I am not for a lot of reasons, one being that they got a good shot anyway. You don't let the best defense in the NBA set up. You don't let them call a timeout, regroup, and figure out how they want to defend. Now the Minnesota Timberwolves can do what they want, and you're reacting to what they're doing instead of them reacting to what you're doing. Haliburton clearly wanted Nesmith to take the shot. He gave it up. It was fine. It was really, to me, the right decision. Now, obviously, again, it didn't work, so it's easy to nitpick, but everybody said it after the game. Haliburton said, no timeout there. Carlisle said the same thing. I think they're right. But Anthony Edwards was too good for them late. They got in their own way a few too many times, including a layup that could have been a foul. Haliburton missed a free throw. Just a lot of stuff that, had it been slightly tweaked, could have gone their way. And yet they never should have been in that situation in the first place because they started the game so lethargically. Let's talk about slow starts. Does there need to be a lineup change? I've got some data, and I've got some takes for you coming up here in the second segment here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. Hey guys, we have to talk about eBay Motors, our partners who have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire every week, we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh picked out for us on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Picks of the Week. One is a guy the Pacers just played, Kyle Anderson, with Cat, Karl Anthony Towns, who did not play for the Wolves in this game. Uncertain future with his meniscus injury. Kyle Anderson's going to have a much larger role, will likely start. That's big to know. Kelly Olynyk just got extended by the Raptors. He's going to be playing a lot more center with Jakob Poeltl. Vasai Micic is starting and playing for the Charlotte Hornets now. Very valuable to get a starting point guard. I might have said his first name slightly wrong. DeAndre Ayton's out for a while with an injury for the Blazers. Reith's going to be playing quite a bit. And he is a versatile game. And Kyle Lowry with the Anthony Melton sidelined, and even right now, Tyrese Maxey, a fit with the Sixers. Nick Nurse has been leaning on the veteran Kyle Lowry. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball will help you win your fantasy championship. Well, eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. That's the same with your vehicle. Do you remember your dream ride, or do you have a special memory with maybe your first car? Well, with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your dream ride or your first car or whatever stays running smoothly. eBay Motors has brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, it is guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And we are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, jump on over to Locked On Wolves. Hear Ben Bikine talk about the other side of this game. Anthony Edwards, holy smokes, was he good. That dude can freaking play. He was fantastic. He got the win for Minnesota. Clutch. Let's talk about the starts of games, because that was a theme late. I talked about it at the start of the show. Why is this happening? Because this starting five at one point was good. They were plus a lot. They were winning a lot of games. And now they're minus. They're just straight up a minus, right? Entering today, that starting five was minus 13 and 126 minutes. I really should have pulled up there for this game stats. We'll get to the lineup specifically in a second. We really need to talk generally about first quarters for the Pacers. If you've been paying attention or you've been listening to the show, you would know they got their butt kicked today in the first quarter, lost by 10. They scored 16 points, season low in the first quarter against San Antonio. The Spurs on Sunday. The game before that, okay, some insane shot making happened, and it was kind of just bad luck, but they gave up 48 to the Pelicans. They were down 22. They were down double digits in the first quarter 3 times in their last 4 games. And guess what? They won the one game that didn't happen, right? So what's going on? Why is this a thing that's happening? Clearly, there's some energy component to it to me, because that same group picks it up as the game goes on. Tonight, by the way, Pacers starters were +4 in 19 minutes and 57 seconds. They're still negative in total, but they were a positive tonight. So what is going on here? Let's dig under the hood a little bit at the numbers before we rush to conclusions. To me, this is an energy thing. It at least looks like it. But the numbers do tell at least somewhat of a different picture. So let's just go back to the All-Star break, right? That's about when this lineup began to start again. Aaron Nesmith had been dealing with some injuries too, though, so it's not a perfect timing. Since the All-Star break, though, Pacers are 4-4, but they've lost some close games. Of course, they lost this one to Minnesota. That was close. San Antonio was close for a while. Toronto was close. Granted, of course, the game they lost to New Orleans, or excuse me, they won against New Orleans, a close game, but some of their losses have been close games since the break, right? So their net rating, despite being 4-4, is plus. Their net rating since the All-Star break is plus 1.9. That's pretty good. It's not what they need, but it's not, it's not bad. Their first quarter net rating since the All-Star break, though, is minus 3.8. Yuck. That's horrible. That's in the bottom 10 of the league. Their second quarter net rating since the All-Star break is plus 11. That's great. That's fantastic. We've seen lots of success with their bench. They've been valiant in those quarters as they push back. Their third quarter net rating is minus 4.5. Yuck. Very similar to the first quarter. And their fourth quarter net rating is plus 5.3. What this suggests, just from a quarter-to-quarter basis, is as the Pacers start to mix and match, or as the game progresses, and as their bench can play more, because they have a very effective bench, one of the best in the league, they do better. They're more effective than the other team. They can play different five-man combos that help them. So just knowing the numbers I've said so far, you might say, and I would think this is a smart place to go, maybe lineups are the problem. Maybe the starting five does need to change. They can mix and match well throughout the game. Well, maybe they need to mix and match a different opening five into the game, right? Now they're minus 9 on the season. They entered the day minus 13. But let me tell you some other numbers about the Pacers and their lineups, specifically the starting five that we saw today. Haliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam, Turner. Entering today, minus 24 in 46 first quarter minutes is that starting five. Ugh. So that means they're plus 11 through the rest of games. In 28 second quarter minutes, that exact starting five is plus 6. In 44 third quarter minutes, this is the one that gets me. They're plus 8. So even though the Pacers have been getting butt kicked in third quarter since the All-Star break, well, this group has been doing well. And in their 18 fourth quarter minutes, this group is minus 3. So the anomaly of those is clearly by a mile the first quarter at minus 24, where the rest are all above 0 or near 0, the fourth quarter notwithstanding. So maybe they do just suck to start games, and there's something else going on under the hood in the third quarter. Well, what is there to make of this? Clearly the numbers agree for everything except the third quarter specifically. The biggest issue to me, look, I can give you numbers, I could give you details, I could tell you what everybody's saying. We're all watching the games, right? This is similar to what I said about Tyrese Haliburton's ineffectiveness. We're all watching the games. Like, it just looks worse. There's no energy to start the games. Like, something Rick Carlisle said specifically about this game that will stick with me is they switched Andrew Nembhard on to Anthony Edwards to start the second half, and that actually was a big adjustment that helped the Pacers make their comeback originally. And Carlisle said he was defending him like he was pissed off, right? And the Pacers came back in the third quarter and took the lead. That kind of stuff is contagious. It spreads to your team, and it is not there early in these games. It almost feels like they're floating and coasting just a tiny bit. That didn't happen in Dallas, right? They needed to win badly. They wanted to get it. They came for the throat, and they won, right? That has to be there. That has to be there for this team to win, given what we've seen in the last 4 games. And so if energy is the biggest problem, more so than anything, because, again, this starting five is winning their third quarter minutes. And that's one of Tyrese Haliburton and Rick Carlisle's biggest assets to me. They are really good tacticians. So at halftime, when the team can kind of review how they're being covered and what adjustments they need to make, they're really sharp. They're doing a good job there. That's why they're a better second half team than first half team for much of the season, including tonight. So does the lineup change actually accomplish anything, right? If, let's say, you solve the first quarter energy problem, does that make you good elsewhere? Do you lose a lot elsewhere? Are you actually a better team for making that decision? Maybe if the starting five keeps being this abhorrent in the first quarter, the answer is unequivocally yes, right? Maybe. But if it's just that their energy isn't there, and all they have to do is find a way to, that sounds so easy. They have to find a way to have that energy early. That's the solution. Maybe that's the solution, because you've heard the discussions if you've been listening to the show, sometimes with guests, sometimes with myself. We've opined about the starting five. Who should it actually be? Should Nembhard be at the 2? Should someone else be at the 2? Should someone else be at the 3? The Pacers' best stretch of the season featured Jalen Smith at the 4, pre-Siakam trade, right? They made a starting lineup change to get bigger, more physical, hit the glass hard, right? Do they need to do that again? Is that the change they opt to make? Get more size on the floor? I think what that would come down to is, are they willing to start Jalen Smith and then move Andrew Nembhard to the bench? But that's not easy to do, because then, okay, maybe Ben Mathurin can play the 3. Is Ben Shepherd not playing? He can't really play the 4, can he? Right? Like, maybe, but not easily. It's just really hard to kind of figure out exactly what the change would look like to get the size on the floor. If it's Turner 5, Smith 4, Siakam 3, Nesmith 2, Haliburton 1, now your bench doesn't make as much sense, and maybe you're burying someone else to make this work, because you still need someone to be the backup 5, and Isaiah Jackson would presumably get that role. So there are ways to do it, obviously. They made this exact sacrifice before, but it was pre their trades. So if they make a lineup change, I'm not exactly sure what it is. That doesn't mean that nothing is possible. It's just a little harder to come up with a lineup change that makes them bigger and physical. It wasn't as hard earlier in the season. So the slow starts are clearly a thing, right? Bad first quarter net ratings. Their starting 5s plus minus in the first quarter is bad. It was bad again today against a very hobbled Timberwolves group. Like, they have to start games better. They're hurting themselves so much with these just absolutely abysmal first quarters. They know it. They've talked about it on more than one occasion, but it keeps happening. So there has to be something has to change in the prep or in the product to fix it, because it's a big problem. And I don't know what the change can be, if it's just energy, because should be a given in the NBA, but it hasn't been. And this team needs to find it, because it cost them another game. I don't think they would have beat the Pels with a good first quarter, because that team was running so hot, but a good first quarter has now cost them, a bad first quarter has now cost them 2 of their last 3 games. They have got to get off to better start. Some other stuff to cover from this game. What actually kind of went well? I've only talked about the poo-poo of the beginning and the end. What went well? And Ben Mathurin hurt and going to miss some time. Who needs to step up for the Pacers? Let's talk about all that to close out today's show. But first, we got to talk about LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It's a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else, and it does all that, making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows small businesses are wearing so many hats, might not have time or resources to hire, so they are always finding ways to make it easier. They even have new features that help you write job descriptions, which again makes the process quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. You should be next. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And we're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Make Locked On Celtics or Locked On Nuggets your second listen. Awesome game. I am recording this later because I had to watch the rest of that game. It was awesome. It was fantastic. Close game late. Nuggets pull it out, which for the Pacers doesn't matter for anything standings-wise or anything that actually matters-wise. But now the Pacers are no longer the only NBA team to have beaten the Celtics twice this season. You can welcome the Denver Nuggets to that group. Really impressive win. Jokic good. Aaron Gordon phenomenal in that game. Some crazy plays from Aaron Gordon. Let's close out with some Pacers stuff that went well in this game. It wasn't all doom and gloom. For example, Tyrese Haliburton played really well. 23 points and 13 assists. That's the Tyrese Haliburton that fans know, and yet still is struggling from deep. 2 for 7. It's going to click. I said this on the radio at 1075 The Fan on Thursday. It's just going to click. He's playing better already. He's in more of a groove. If the 3 start falling, he's going to look awesome. And he played better in this game. His impact was high. He was clearly frustrated at times. He smacked the stanchion. He hurt his hip when Aaron Nesmith need him going for a rebound. But he played very well. 23 points, 13 assists. 5 turnovers was his big killer, though. And a lot of those were in the first quarter when the Pacers were being really sloppy. I thought it was encouraging to see him actually have a really solid statistical night and be able to get to his spots. But in general, a good game despite those turnovers. 24 points plus 8 for Pascal Siakam. His defense was good against his Minnesota team that has a lot of size, and they still couldn't stop him. They didn't have the perfect matchup to do it. McDaniel's too skinny because he could post him up in the mid-post. Anderson too slow. Everybody else too small or a big that's too slow. He did a wonderful job. If they could have played him a little more, I think that would have helped, but was not quite the easiest thing to do. Those two, the stars, were good enough. The Pacers did not get enough from some other guys. Jalen Smith was really good, 14 points, 4 assists. He did not miss a shot from the field. Those were the standout performers to me in terms of offensive output. Myles Turner was really good defensively, 4 blocks, but kind of got bullied on the glass. He had 7 rebounds. Gobert had 14. That was huge. And Naz Reid had 8 as well. So the centers for the Timberwolves did bully Myles Turner, even though he did have a strong impact defensively, and they won his minutes. They won the starters' minutes in general. The Haliburton plus bench minutes that I talked about yesterday did not go so well, but the starters were cohesive enough to work. Andrew Nembhard, had really good stats also outside of the turnovers. Turnovers really killed the Pacers in this game. 15. You can't do that against the Wolves. They just needed one more guy to be a little bit better, and they would have won. 2 points, that's one shot. That is one shot. Pacers didn't have it. They didn't generate the threes they normally do. They only took 26 in this game, which I thought was really interesting, but they still had some good performers. Andrew Nembhard defended Anthony Edwards well. Haliburton, Siakam played well. Jalen Smith played a perfect game, but foul trouble, or at least sort of foul trouble. Quasi-frustrations prevented him from playing a little bit more. So it wasn't all bad for the Pacers. There's a reason they were actually in the game for significant stretches of it tonight. Notably absent from this game, Ben Mathurin, who scored 19 points on Tuesday in a win. He's got a shoulder issue that will be reevaluated after the Pacers' coming road trip. They play at Orlando Sunday and then at OKC. And then I think they play Chicago at home, but the reevaluation is that day. So Rick Carlisle thinks that he won't be playing that day either. So Carlisle ruled out Mathurin for 4 games. And then they have 2 days off after that Chicago game before they next play again. That's the 16th. That's a week away. So Mathurin probably out for a little bit over a week after his big game against Dallas. That hurts. That was not something the Pacers particularly would want to see, especially because Doug McDermott also out, right? So they're losing a little bit of wing depth now for their second unit. They've been finding ways to have enough depth recently. Tonight, that meant Jarris Walker time. What that means going forward is they're losing scoring punch with their second unit, right? His self-creation is huge for them. He can get off shots when no one else can, and his pull-up three has been a weapon recently. It just makes it a little harder to mix and match when you need to get that kind of creation with your bench group, especially like tonight. McConnell 3 for 7, not as good as he's been in recent games, right? They didn't have quite the same scoring punch with the bench, and they were not good enough, right? They've been solid of late. They were not good enough in this game. And so without Mathurin, yeah, Shepard's going to play more, and he's going to play every game. He can be a 2. We know that. He was rock solid again. He made both of his threes. He had 4 rebounds. But they need wing depth. They need a backup 3 kind of guy. It was Jarris Walker in this game. I think that was the right choice. 5 points, 5 rebounds, no turnovers, less gambly defense, made a catch and shoot 3 for the Pacers. That's significant. So their 10 today was the usual starters: Obi Toppin, Ben Sheppard, Jalen Smith, TJ McConnell, and Jarris Walker. And Isaiah Jackson played because Myles Turner was in foul trouble. But I think that's the 10 I read would be the rotation you see most often from the Pacers. So as it stands, until Doug McDermott returns, Jarris Walker time could be coming for the Pacers. Nothing bad about getting minutes for him when they can. It's really hard to do it normally, given the state of their team and their current goals and his current level. But he played well in this game. I thought he didn't look out of place, especially in the first half. He was hitting the glass again. That catch and shoot 3 was huge. But no Mathurin for 4 games. They've got to find a way to get a scoring punch with their bench. I think that's going to require some unique mixing and matching. Maybe that's more Nembhard with that group. I mean, they already are going to have to stagger Haliburton and Siakam every possible minute they can to get enough scoring on the floor. But whatever it takes to keep the bench afloat is going to be critical now, because they're losing a very key piece in Ben Mathurin, and maybe at a time where they have to change their lineup in general. We'll see. I don't think that's where I'm going yet with my bad starts take, but if they have a couple more low energy, gross ones, then it is time to make that a very serious discussion. Pacers, losers of 3 or 4, still in 8th in the East. Plenty more to talk about with this team starting next week, including maybe their biggest game left of the season, Orlando Magic on Sunday. Their kryptonite so far this season, the team that they're a team they're trying to catch in the standings. And we'll be there. I'll be in Orlando on Sunday. So we'll do a podcast from the Kia Center talking about it. We'll cover it. We'll have all the storylines from Pacers Magic, and then we'll right in to the games next week. Hope you guys enjoyed today's show. Lots to cover, lots of ground to cover from a fun game, even though it was not a fun result for the Indiana Pacers. If I said something stupid or you have any questions, at Tony R. East is the way to go on Twitter, or the podcast itself is at Locked On Pacers. Thank you guys a ton for listening. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and we will see you on Monday.